In the not-too-distant future, rapid climate change has caused a dramatic rise in sea levels, prompting humanity to seek refuge beyond Earth. They built shelters along the orbital planes between the Earth and the Moon, and spent years moving most of their citizens there. After settling in, 3 of these shelters, shelters 8, 12, and 13, declare themselves the Adrian Republic, launching a brutal war with the rest of the shelters, who form the Allied force. As a result of the war, those remaining on Earth are forced to live in a world dedicated to building weapons and robots for the fight. The best of these soldiers is the renowned Captain Jung Yi, who after surviving an explosion finds herself being hunted by a group of humanoid robots. Utilizing her sharpshooting skills and the hook on her weapon, she manages to fend off her attackers. But her victory is short-lived as a more formidable robot, equipped with 4 legs, emerges. Determined to defeat the machine, Jung Yi devises a plan to beat it. She uses her surroundings to her advantage, setting up a trap that will ensnare the robot. After hiding behind a car, Jung Yi prepares to take her final shot, only to be distracted by a small doll hanging from the rearview mirror. This lapse in focus proves fatal, as the robot manages to get the upper hand, shooting Jung Yi and causing her to stumble back. As she inspects her broken hand, she makes a shocking discovery. She is, in fact, an android, something she had never known before. As she processes this revelation, an alarm sounds, and the town around her disappears. In fact, the real Jung Yi died in combat several years prior. Now a team of scientists have embarked on a mission to create the perfect soldier android. Their main objective is to create an army of androids that could be multiplied and sent to war. The team is led by Seo Hyun, the daughter of the late Jung Yi, a legendary soldier who died in battle. And to create the perfect android, the team is using a copy of Jung Yi's brain. The project has been going on for a while, but there hasn't been much progress. During the simulations that recreate Jung Yi's last battle, she always loses in the same spot, and the team is unable to figure out why. Seo Hyun watches her mother die over and over again as they attempt to improve her performance. The head of the project, Sang-hoon, decides to make a special presentation for the higher-ups of the army to promote their android. However, the soldiers are bored, and they want him to get to the point quickly. Sang-hoon explains that they're mapping Jung Yi's neural cortex and converting it to data to develop the most advanced combat command AI ever. Seo Hyun demonstrates how the simulations have been recording behavioral patterns. However, the soldiers notice that the android hasn't escaped the simulation yet, and they realize that if Jung Yi hadn't lost that battle, they would have already won the war. The team knows that until they can solve Jung Yi's final mistake, they won't be funded. They are determined to succeed, as the consequences of failure are dire, so they must push the limits of science to create the ultimate weapon. As the presentation ends, Seo Hyun and Sang-hoon have a private meeting to discuss their next steps. Sang-hoon, who has been working for the chairman for 10 years, reassures Seo Hyun of his full support and the high expectations the chairman has for her. Sang-hoon feels a sense of responsibility towards Seo Hyun, as he remembers her as a little girl who lost her mother, and he wants to maintain a good working relationship with her. After the meeting, Seo Hyun teams up with newbie Jae-kyung to troubleshoot the latest model. However, the remnants of Jung Yi's brain start to reawaken, causing the fake Jung Yi to panic and suffer in agony as she sees herself as a robot. Seo Hyun quickly turns off the pain sensors to spare the fake Jung Yi from further distress, while Android demands to know what went wrong. Unfortunately, the brain copy is too damaged to salvage, so Seo Hyun orders its destruction. With the day's work done, Jae-kyung expresses his excitement to work with Seo Hyun, especially since he's always admired Jung Yi. He sees her as a hero, but Seo Hyun corrects him, explaining that Jung Yi joined the war as a mercenary to pay for her treatment as a child. Seo Hyun recalls crying every time her mother went into battle, and how her mother died the day of Seo Hyun's surgery. Sometimes Seo Hyun wonders if her mother regretted the sacrifice she made for her daughter. Jae-kyung suggests that Seo Hyun could ask the android as she keeps the real Jung Yi's memories, but Seo Hyun seems hesitant to try. Seo Hyun has a rather eventful day. She takes the local train and witnesses a touching interaction between a mother and her child. This reminds her of her own mother, whom she hasn't seen in a long time. The last time they met was just before Seo Hyun's surgery, which was successful thanks to her mother's selfless sacrifice. Her mother hugged Seo Hyun tightly and gave her a lucky cheek rub before leaving for battle, promising to return. Seo Hyun can still vividly recall that moment. When Seo Hyun reaches her destination, she heads to take the annual ethics test that everyone must take to prove that they are not androids. The test mainly focuses on emotions and morals. After completing the test, Seo Hyun goes to see her doctor. Unfortunately, the news isn't good. The tumor has returned to her lungs, and she has only 3 months to live. This means that the surgery she had as a child and her mother's sacrifice have all been in vain. The doctor recommends the best course of action, copying Seo Hyun's brain and transferring it to a prosthetic body. However, there are 3 types of prosthetic bodies bodies to choose from. Type A is expensive, but the person who chooses it will retain all their rights including marriage, freedom of movement, and adoption. Type B is cheaper, but it comes with certain limitations. The person who chooses this option will lose rights that Type A has. Additionally, the government will require the person's consent to access their brain data. Type C, on the other hand, is free, but it is the most drastic option. The person who chooses it will surrender ownership of their brain data to certified companies who will then make thousands of clones. This option will mean that the person will no longer be an individual, but at least they will have prosthetic body for free. Seo-hyun promises to think about options and leaves the doctor to recharge. As Seo-hyun exits the building, her mind drifts back to the day the higher-ups from her company visited her grandmother's house. They had come with an offer to use Jung Yi's brain on androids, promising to fund Seo-hyun's upbringing in return. As a gesture of goodwill, they even presented her with an action figure of Jung Yi, assuring her that her mother would be remembered as a hero forever. The next day, her team prepares to test a new simulation using a freshly copied brain. However, Sang-hoon suggests a new approach, ordering the team to shoot the android in the leg before starting the simulation. Seo-hyun's mother wakes up in the simulation writhing in pain from the leg wound. Her will to fight begins to diminish until a new area of her brain lights up just as the enemy is about to finish her off. Jung Yi stands up ready to continue fighting, and she defeats the robot. Unfortunately, due to the gunshot wound from a different enemy, the brain turned out to be lost. Sang-hoon is elated by the progress they have made and eagerly plans to show it off to the higher-ups. The next day, the entire team travels to the company's headquarters to present their findings, but instead the chairman, they meet with the new head of the product development department, who seems to be amused by Sang-hoon's presentation and fails to take him seriously. This confuses Sang-hoon as the company has never had a product development department before and has only ever produced weapons. He worries that weapons development may be downsized, but his concerns fall on deaf ears as the team is sent away without answers. Several days have passed, and the team is examining new parts to incorporate into their next android test when they receive a message that the chairman has come to meet them. Sang-hoon questions Seo-hyun on whether she has been taking her ethics test, as it is vital to ensure her mental stability while dealing with her mother as an experiment. They arrive at the office, and Sang-hoon suddenly freezes, revealing that he is an android created by the chairman by copying his brain, though he is unaware of it. The chairman arrives with important news. The Allied force and the Adrian Republic have signed a treaty bringing an end to the war and rendering weapons unnecessary. He tells that his original plan was to transfer his consciousness into Sang-hoon to achieve immortality. However, he opted just to replicate it as he wouldn't feel comfortable living inside a machine, which would feeling fake forever. Seo-hyun is undeterred by the fact that the android is not authentic and desires to continue with her mother's project, but the chairman declines her request. The team gets back to work a few hours late, intending to complete the project before switching their focus to new goals. Unfortunately, Jung Yi still dies at the same spot, and Sang-hoon is furious as they cannot reactivate that particular brain area to isolate it. Sang-hoon decides to try some extreme measures. He instructs the team to activate the android and cut her arm, forcing Seo-hyun to witness her agony as the pain area of her brain reaches unbearable levels. However, the new brain area still refuses to light up, and Sang-hoon becomes increasingly desperate. He attempts to shoot the android's legs to match the wound from the previous day, but Seo-hyun has had enough and shuts down the system to end Jung Yi's suffering, enraging Sang-hoon, who then threatens her with his gun. Seo-hyun refuses to back down and holds her ground, but before Sang-hoon can do anything rash, another employee arrives to inform him that the chairman wishes to see him. Sang-hoon leaves, and Seo-hyun thanks her team for their hard work. She requests that they compile all the data they have collected and send it to her, even though it's time to shut down the project. Sometime later, Seo-hyun stares at the data with an unwavering focus, despite the pain in her lungs. Suddenly, she discovers that her mother's brain has been exported one last time without her knowledge. Driven by curiosity, she decides to investigate and ventures towards Jae-kyung's room. As she approaches, she overhears strange noises and cautiously enters the room. To her horror, she discovers Jae-kyung engaging in intimate acts with an android that wears her mother's face. Fueled by anger, Seo-hyun covers the android with a blanket and confronts Jae-kyung for his immoral actions. He tries to justify himself by claiming that he was only following orders. Seo-hyun is shocked to learn that the creation of household AIs includes the production of androids capable of providing intimacy to their owners. The android that Jae-kyung had been with is a replica of her mother, who was popular amongst clients due to her Type C persona. Seo-hyun is heartbroken by the revelation and leaves the room realizing that she should have seen this coming. Memories of her dead mother come flooding back to her, especially the action figure that was gifted to her as a present. Overwhelmed with emotions, Seo-hyun returns to the lab to spend time with the android before the project is taken away. Sang-hoon is also present and seems to be dealing with his own personal struggles. Seo-hyun pays no attention to him and enters the android chamber where she awakens Jung Yi by shutting down her pain sensors. She tells Jung Yi that they have rescued her from the enemy and that she is severely wounded, which convinces her to accept her impending demise. Just as Seo-hyun is about to turn off the android, Jung Yi's brain activity suddenly spikes and she inquires about her daughter's well-being. Overcome with emotion, Seo-hyun breaks down in tears as she realizes that both times Jung Yi's brain activity spiked, it was because she feared dying without seeing her daughter again. Seo-hyun informs her that the surgery was successful and that her daughter is well. Jung Yi is relieved to hear this news, but also admits to feeling guilty for losing a doll that her daughter had given her before her surgery. That's why she always loses at the same spot. She's distracted by seeing the little doll in the car. Unable to handle the guilt and the pain any longer, Seo-hyun switches off the android. She experiences a full breakdown, but she knows what she must do next. The following day, Seo-hyun requests one last simulation before the project is shut down. She decides to work alone and deletes an unidentified part of Jung Yi's brain. Seo-hyun then whispers in Jung Yi's ear about the terrible things that will occur if they don't take action. During the final simulation, Jung Yi executes the usual battle tactics and dies, in the same place as always. Jae-kyung notices an unusual response from the brain, but Sang-hoon dismisses it since the project is over. They take the android away, and Sang-hoon heads to his room only to realize he has seen something strange. He quickly rushes back to the lab and requests the simulation be replayed in slow motion, confirming that Jung Yi had not actually been shot. She had only pretended and fallen in the usual spot. Sang-hoon activates the alarm, and Jung Yi takes out the employees who were trying to take her away. Seo-hyun rushes back to the lab, deletes all the original project data, and helps Jung Yi escape. They come across a room filled with dozens of robots that look like Jung Yi, but before they can process this, Sang-hoon's security robots locate them, sparking a brutal fight. Jung Yi is a legendary fighter, so she quickly defeats them all. However, one robot pushes her against the wall to kill her. Seo-hyun arrives just in time and disables the robot. She tells Jung Yi they're in this together, and she trusts her because Seo-hyun's voice was the one from her dreams. Minutes later, the security robots arrive at the hangar. They take Seo-hyun away before they shoot at Jung Yi. When they inspect the body, they find it empty. Seo-hyun had successfully transferred her brain copy to a security android to evade detection. As they board the train, Sang-hoon appears, accusing Seo-hyun of ingratitude and demanding that Jung Yi step away from her daughter. Hearing that she is her little girl shocks Jung Yi, but Seo-hyun tries to explain that she has erased all memories of herself from her mother's mind so she can start anew without any more sacrifices. Sang-hoon's anger boils over, and he shoots Seo-hyun in the shoulder. Jung Yi springs into action, returning fire with Sang-hoon's own gun. In a moment of panic, Sang-hoon sees his true android form reflected in the window and falls into rage. The fight between Sang-hoon and Jung Yi is intense, throwing their bodies all around the train cabin and causing the train to shake violently. Eventually, Sang-hoon manages to push Jung Yi out of the window, but she doesn't give up. She flies back into the train through another window, ready to face Sang-hoon once again. At that moment, in a parallel train, more security robots arrive and connect the wagons together. Jung Yi fights them off with ease, but Sang-hoon manages to catch her with a hook. Seo-hyun tries to intervene but is pushed away by the robot. This makes Jung Yi more aggressive, and she destroys all the remaining robots. Sang-hoon is kicked out of the train but manages to make his way back inside by holding onto the hook. As they continue fighting, the train reaches the city, and the wagon's shaking becomes too much for the tracks to bear. Seo-hyun shoots a hook for Jung Yi to grab, and they let the second wagon fall with Sang-hoon inside. The train finally comes to a stop in the mountains, and Jung Yi wants to take care of Seo-hyun's bullet wound. However, Seo-hyun explains that she doesn't have much time left and wants Jung Yi to start a new life for herself. After some hesitation, Jung Yi agrees and says goodbye to Seo-hyun with a hug and a lucky cheek rub. After all, Seo-hyun dies alone, but feeling at peace. Meanwhile, Jung Yi is in the mountains, away from people who might try to use her again. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.